Welcome, everyone. My name is Christo Panchugov. As the tag says, I'm a PhD in political science at New Bulgarian University, assistant professor in the Department of Political Science as well. I'm also currently in the role of Federal Communication Officer. So welcome to the first episode of what we decided to call ERUA Talks. This is part of the ambition of ERUA to actually be able to contribute to debating and discussing the big challenges that our societies, political systems, and education face in recent years. So in our first episode and first debate, which will be on the topic of X versus X, universities in the era of technology, technological demagogy. I will be joined by Associate Professor Dr. Virgis Valentivicius, who is in the Institute of Communication at Mykolas Romelis University in Vilnius, Lithuania. He has a strong background in communication, political philosophy, information warfare, etc. He has also quite an extensive experience as journalist for Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty, former head of the major Lithuanian news agency. So we are looking forward both his academic and practical expertise. Then here with us is Professor Karina Kraevska. She is a professor in media studies at the University of Social Science and Humanities, SWPS, which is in Poland. She's also a media expert and researcher on the role of disinformation in society for the Central European Digital Media Observatory. Also with us, we have Professor Jean-Eric Passot, who is from the European University in Viadrina. He's also the Vice President for Research and Career Development at the University of Viadrina, and since 2020, he has been a Professor of Sociology of Technology at the European New School of Digital Studies, also at the European University of Viadrina. Then we have the Associated Professor, Dr. Justin Toms. She is from the New Bulgarian University, and she is with the Media and Communication Department at our university, also has quite an extensive background in digital marketing and digital media. And finally, Dr. Bartosz Kisior, who is also with the SWPS and background in sociology, and also extensive experience with regards disinformation, fake news. So all of these topics we will try to address today. So without any further ado, I will jump right into it. Probably with a question directly addressed to Justin to open up the floor. Recently, a scandal developed around the use specifically of TikTok by external agents, but not only, in the elections in Romania. This sheds quite a bit of light on how this media can actually impact and influence not only voters, but general opinions in society. So my question is, do we have a job at trying to at all? But also, can we assure that actually the algorithms in themselves are not used in such way that they can actually impact elections and the political process in our countries?
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you for the question and for this debate. I think it is the right time to do such a debate because the dynamic of the environment in the society is huge. About the political impact of the algorithms, we all know that it's there, and it's not there since the elections in Romania, but it's there for many, many years now, unfortunately. And currently we don't have many options. Although there are some European measures like a framework, at least how all these algorithms have to work, but we don't have exact rules because the algorithms are changing as very dynamically in the last years, and I believe that the regulations have to follow, but a little bit with a bigger speed, because currently they cannot catch up the technological development, and especially with the AI and the algorithms together, they can do huge damages. And we don't always have tools even to catch up what's going on behind the scene. Hopefully, we will be able to take measures into this direction, but we all have to act immediately as a society. And I'm proud that we are talking about this because the discussion is part of the process, in my opinion.
Okay. Thank you. So we also saw, to expand a bit the question, specifically with TikTok, but also on X, pretty much. The adoption of new policy that left no opt-out option, especially in the face of how personal data is used from AI and generating content. As a result, a lot of universities, specifically in Germany, left the platform X. So maybe Professor Passot, you can give us some reasons for that, and basically how we can address this type of lack of regulation and the ability of actually users to be able to decide what type of data is used and what not.
Yes, thanks a lot also for having us together in this room for debating these kind of questions. Viadrina and a few other universities decided just recently, so beginning of this year, to in a joint effort of more than 50 plus institutions to collaboratively and collectively leave X as a platform for science communication, at least for active science communication. That had some interesting follow-ups. So after these 50 plus institutions left, also bigger funding organizations, for example, as the DFG and others left as well. So this obviously caused some stir-up. The rationale behind this was not so much one of only of choice, but one where institutions need to actively decide which of the platforms that are out there are the tool of choice for their active communication, specifically with student audiences, with academic audiences, and the like. And we at least decided that the work it takes to moderate all the reactions and discussions that follow communication on X is so big and vast because of the acceleration of algorithmic influence on the one hand, and the debate culture that emerged around this, that it is time to look for alternatives. And we have alternatives, specifically when it comes to services such as Blue Sky and Mastodon, services that basically work on open and distributed protocols. So give sovereign decision-making into the hands of people who run server instances, for example. So we decided for active communication to move to these. But of course, that's also something that comes with losses, because of course, the audiences that one can reach on platforms such as X are, of course, much bigger than the ones that are now gathering on these alternative platforms. But if you don't move, then it stays that way. So this is one of the reasons that brought us into that decision.
Okay, and throwing sub question to Professor Vergis. coming from journalistic perspective also, but from a country which is bordering basically one of the sources of these type of attacks that we assume have happened through TikTok in recently Romania, but not only, reading their reports in a lot of neighborhood countries as well. So what do you think our response to this type of pressure has to be?
Well, you are quite right. We are on the front line, and actual war is happening 400 kilometers from our border, and we have a lot of hostile information warfare here, and we try to deal with that in basically mobilizing political will and using media as such. And in this respect, I would disagree with a very formulation, technological demagoguery. For me, technology is one thing and demagoguery is another. TikTok by itself cannot produce demagoguery. Politicians do. So in order to fight demagoguery, we need to get engaged into political fight. And we are very quick to have doubts about meaning of social media when Donald Trump wins, and he actually did. But we are somehow forgetting that Barack Obama was very much helped to win his first election by Facebook and his second election by Twitter. And only on Twitter, or now X, we have a history of attempts to regulate, to ban, or to allow everything. But basically, I believe that the general attitudes of political class towards how to use media, it is what matters. I believe that the best way to regulate any media, new media including, is what Jan Hendrik is talking about. That means by consumer's choice. If you do not like one or another platform, you leave it. You leave it and you use something else. So for me, let's say, okay, scandal in Romania with TikTok. Here in Lithuania, we have at least one anti-Semitic personality and his party using TikTok quite widely to get into parliament. But again, you cannot blame TikTok for that. You can blame other politicians, mainstream politicians, not using efficiently enough same TikTok. And for me, again, not probably even bigger worry is what's now is going on in America with mainstream media. That Washington Post, basically a former fortress of free speech and independent media, is now taken, and it is taken by political will of people who are now ruling America.
I see your point, but is it as straightforward as it seems? I mean, obviously politicians create demagogy, but then we are talking about algorithms. So you have one side willing to understand it and use it, and the other side that simply decides to leave it. So who are we leaving the people to? If all of us leave this platform, can we simply ignore the fact that it continues, that people are willing to continue be in this platform and they will continue to be used as an instrument in that warfare that you're mentioning. And passing on with this note to Professor Kraevska, perhaps, currently the European Union is the only one trying to actually think about regulation in these type of areas. And we are facing significant pushback from the United States, where most of these companies are actually based. So what do you think our role should be as universities, as members of societies, with regards to everything that has been said also at this point?
Thank you very much. Thank you for invitation to this debate. And in my opinion, this is one of the most important and difficult questions, because I would like to talk about universities and about people. The first point is, of course, you're right, that we as, let's say, maybe not we, but European Union is trying to make some regulations in the field of social media, in the field of, let's say, combating disinformation, etc., etc. But it's very difficult. And there are, in my opinion, there are two reasons why it's so difficult. First of all, the reason is the specifics of social media, and as well as the specifics of the internet itself, because it's very difficult, or I would say even impossible, for effective regulation. I mean, internet, social media, due to the dynamics of change, but also due to the characteristics of this type of communication, where, as we all know, the activity of the audience is very important. The border between the recipients and the someone who is producing the content is not very clear, or doesn't exist at all, in fact. So this is the first point. But in my opinion, problem is even much more complex and complicated and deeper, let's say, because it's the question of the limits of freedom of speech. And as we all know, critics of the DSA raise this argument very eagerly, though essentially, in my opinion, without merit. But it's going to very popular. It's very popular, and it's going to be more and more popular when we are talking about the situation in United States. And my opinion, yes, is that, of course, it's some kind of demagogy, let's say, demagogical argument, but I think that it's worth keeping in mind for us that freedom of speech is one of the key values of our, let's say, democratic European societies. So we should be particularly sensitive to it. And of course, and I want to stress, I'm not suggesting that the both regulations, for example, DSA, restrict the freedom of speech. But what I'm talking about, that every kind of trying, controlling or restricting the flow of content in social media will be pushed by this kind of demagogical, but still very popular argument. So summing up, the regulation is important, and we should try to discuss it, and we try to use it in European Union. But it's very difficult, firstly, because it cannot be fully effective. And secondly, because it will be exposed to such arguments I was talking about before. So, relate to what Professor Virgis told. I think that I said regulation is important, but education is even more important. Because in the area of countering disinformation, this education is something which is still discussing a lot. And I think that we agree that this is the base for something which is called building social resilience to disinformation, or fighting disinformation, but I rather prefer not to use these war metaphors. So, because finally, at the end of the communication process, it is the audience, it is the recipients, and it's their ability to, let's say, think critically, receive media critically, as well as the ability, I think it's also important to use simple tools to check information. I think that we will come back to this point later on. And I think this is the role of the universities, that we should promote this kind of thinking about the word, this kind of critical thinking about the word. We should teach our students, etc., etc. And it's even wider problem because media education should be supported by building trust in scientific knowledge. And now we have universities again. And this scientific knowledge, this trust in scientific knowledge is, as we know, in Poland, but not only in Poland, in many countries in Europe, quite low. And also we should work on trust in institutions, also on trust in traditional media, let's say, and journalists, professional journalists, and last but not least, the trust as a general social trust, which is also, as we know in Poland, very, very low. This social trust is important because, for example, it reduces the audience susceptibility to narrative like us and them. And this narrative is, for example, one of the bases for example, hate speech or conspiracy theories, etc., etc. So, summing up, conscious regulations, yes, but the basis should be educational activities aimed to different social groups, from professional groups to, let's say, so-called general public, especially young people. So that's what I would, for the beginning, I would answer the questions like that.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to react to this specific? Yeah, Justine?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I absolutely agree that education is very important in media literacy, and it also comes with digital literacy and nowadays AI literacy, but it's a slow process, as we all know. So in my opinion, those two have to go together. And there still are regulations and educations in media literacy, they have to go together, but this is really slow. And the technology and the political takeover of the technologies, as Vergis said, are something that is not that slow, it is very quick. So in my opinion, we as academia and we as leaders, in a way, opinion makers in the society, we have to act. This debate, to me, in my opinion, is part of the acting to show the society that it goes maybe not in the best direction, and eventually that we have to take measures more rapidly. But this is actually the real leadership that the academia has to show nowadays, to alarm the society that the processes that are going on are not very good, let's say. So I agree, regulations, they are slow. Education, it's again a slow process. And something else, all of us ringing the bell, which is maybe a little bit faster.
Okay, then a provocation I would have. There is a concept relatively well known since the mid 2000s, so 2005, if I'm correct, which is called bullshit. A concept which relates to the ability to fill out the public space, the informational space, with irrelevant concepts, so that the actual information gets lost, what matters gets lost, that. So how can education keep up without, us trying to figure out if we can regulate the instruments that have been utilized into spreading bullshits? Maybe giving the floor to Bartosz here, and then back at you.
Thank you. Thank you for this question. It's really, really interesting thing, because one of the part of this problem is that media communication via internet is being flooded by all this content being made for algorithms, for Google and for Google Discover, and we observe more and more content, even media content produced by journalists, which is created for SEO reasons, not for humane, real users, just to be in the front page of Google search, for example. So I think that the role of the university is, once more, as Professor Stasiuk Krajewska said, which was really valuable to educate, because we not only need media literacy, we also need to put a pressure on government and a state to introduce any measures to do that. Because yeah, the thing with regulations is that this is a very slow process. We have the DSA Act, of course, on the European level, but for instance, in Poland, it still has not been introduced on the state level. It still waits to be introduced in practice. So all the responsibility right now lies upon the users, and if the users are educated enough to put the pressure on the governments, for instance, we can do something about it. And this is the role of the university to underline this issue. I want to also shout out to this recent Eurobarometer report, which came out just 20th of February, I think 8 days ago. And it shows that the belief in conspiracy theories in Europe is rising comparing to 2021. Now we have 2025. I think that the research has been conducted in 2024, actually, but it's not that we are more educated, we're less educated. The more and more people believe in conspiracy theories, and this is where universities should step in to spread the education, not just to stop the, as Mr. Vergis said, just the mechanisms of social media.
Yeah, Professor Vergis.
Yeah,
Vergis.
thank you. Talking about Christos mentioned bullshit, I want to draw your attention to the simple fact that this is a not new phenomenon. 40 years ago in the United Kingdom, one person was reading broadsheet and 3 other persons were reading tabloids. So every million copy of serious newspaper was shadowed by 3-4 million copies of circulation of tabloid media. So we are not novice in living in environment where not reliable or entertainment prone information was dominant, is dominant. Old days it were just paper tabloids. Now it is social networks. So in a way, we are used to this environment. Of course, new technologies makes everything more massive, more speedy, and so on and so on. But the ratio of serious content and not so serious content, I'm afraid, is remains the same. So again, we here must agree with Karina. Education is crucial in that, and also it is crucial. I support this point very much because it helps to make educated choice. And also I agree, of course, there is regulation is necessary. But since I'm not dramatizing difference between old and new media, I believe that our goal should be to have some set of regulation which applies in equal measure to old media and new media. Somehow, with old media, we more or less have approximate mechanisms to punish slanderous information, to punish hate speech, and so on and so on. And with new media, we are not so successful. So in old continent, in old Europe, I think in two respects now regulation is very important. We have many countries with a experience of totalitarian past. And that obviously calls for regulation of any media, old and new, not to allow any propaganda which would lead to abolishment of democracy. Like recent debate in Germany about AfD. And second point, since we are on the front line and neighboring Russia basically has 200, 300 years experience of interfering in the business of neighboring countries and keeping quite serious information warfare effort on a permanent and professional basis. So in this respect also, I think any regulation is vital.
And Jan-Hendrik wanted to have a reaction.
Yes, thanks a lot. I would like to agree and disagree both at the same time. So agree in the shared understanding that now emerges between Bartosz, Karina, Virgis, and Justine in the sense of this new communication environment, or it's not that new anymore, actually. This rather adult communication environment that we're having now is not so different to the ones we experienced before. But obviously, that's the point I would like to disagree. We were quite unable to translate or update the types of regulatory mechanisms that we implemented for media systems in the traditional sense. One example, or two examples maybe, one that links to the discussion already ongoing, the question of literacy. In the, let's say, the old media world, media literacy meant content-based literacy based on, in terms of knowledge about the production of media organizations, media financing, and the like. So someone making conscious choices about media selections had, if that person had the ability to judge, for example, the backgrounds, the financial situation, the editorial line of a newspaper, for example, that was something that people could use for making choices. In today's times, literacy, media literacy means tech literacy, basically, means being able to understand the computational systems involved, means understanding, like Bartosz rightly pointed out, that lots of the content is produced not for humans to read and not for humans to see, but for machines to pick up and accelerate, and thereby tweaking with the algorithmic systems to flood other types of content, which is directed to humans into their news feeds, for example. So media literacy basically means understanding tech. And here is a responsibility of universities as well, specifically us that are in the humanities, social science realm, to be able to educate not only in terms of media systems, media organization, but specifically in terms of media tech in that regard. The second example I would like to give is how do we organize in a traditional media system the way in which we audit and check the type of content that newspapers, for example, produce, and the way this is in line with democratic discourse and the like. So usually we work with a combination of independent research, trying to give background on what kind of content is out there, what kind of, how do media systems look like, and what are emerging trends and the like. And then we have audit boards, specifically also mostly independent, that are working as in our behalf for handling complaints, but for also working with media organizations to counter this. This doesn't really work in our current media environment. And that has to do with, for example, access to research data. And here we are again at the DSA and in the regulatory realm, because one of the most interesting parts of the DSA for us as researchers is access to research data and the question of how do we handle this. The DSA asks for independent researchers to get access to platform data, for example. But who is considered an independent researcher or vetted researcher is still up for discussion. It is now currently discussed in all the member states, and there is lots of uncertainty of how that plays out. What is a relevant claim for data? What kind of data needs to be delivered by the platform? This is totally up for discussion. So we are currently in a situation where we are flying blind. Basically, we have to somehow illegally scrape data, try to find out a little bit about current media environments, but we are not in a situation like we had in terms of traditional newspaper media, for example, where we had archives of publications that we could go through and crunch. That's simply not the case. So we obviously need to update these mechanisms as well.
And also maybe to introduce a new dimension to the problem that you mentioned. It's not only the acceleration of data that is targeted at humans, but it's also the ability of these instruments to analyze human behavior and profile based on access to data. So when we are talking about regulation and regulating, the access to personal data and its use for delivering targeted messages might be part of the problem. But can Europe be the only place in which we are discussing these issues? If we're seeing such a huge pushback from the United States as a government, from the big technological companies that want to abandon our regulations, especially with regards GDPR and personal data, especially in relationship to training AI algorithms, will that be enough, even if we keep them, if we continue this discussion, answering the questions that Jan Hendrik also asked, and no one else is doing it? So can we at least, I don't know, bring all universities into that discussion, regardless of whether they're stationed, or you see a different approach to addressing these issues? I don't have anyone specific in mind, so whoever feels okay. Justine?
Yeah, thank you. When I was young, when I was child, I grew up in the communistic time, and I remember that we had this huge war. We didn't know what's going on anywhere in the world, just in the other communistic countries eventually. So this makes me think very carefully about how we solve the solutions alone. And from my perspective, there is no solution just for Europe. I mean, we have to think globally, and we have to take care even for the places that maybe cannot deal by themselves, because currently what we see, I would say this is kind of a craziness in a way, especially with the freedom of speech and the free media, as Virgus said in the beginning. They are not anymore that free as we can see. And I really believe that we have to find a solution together with everyone, but obviously we have to lead. So I think this is a very special moment for Europe that gives us a chance to lead into the fair society together with the free media and free society and more democratic society, and take care about the people not only in Europe but in the whole world, without the censorship or without limitations that we currently face. Of course, this is very good proposal, but we have also all together to decide we have to do this. And I believe we will find both academic, political desire to do so. But it's not an easy step. and it's not easy to begin. That's from my perspective.
Okay, any other reactions?
Yes. I would like to add something more about the university and the role of the university, because I think that something which is very important. Bartosz was talking about the results of Rust barometer research, and they are very. I think it's not very optimistic, let's say. So I think that the role of the universities is also to popularize the knowledge, the scientific knowledge. And this is something what we should do, and this is something what we even have to do. And it's very, very difficult because, we as teachers at the universities, we as researchers, we should get to know, we should learn ourselves how to popularize, how to communicate our knowledge in an attractive way. And it's very difficult. And this is something what I'm trying to learn, and I'm trying to learn working with my students. But I think this is some kind of very, very big problem for us, because communicating knowledge in a fair way, communicating knowledge in an interesting way, it's very difficult for us as scientists. So this is something more which I would like to add to this point and to the debate of the role about the role of the universities.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other reactions. So moving on to the question of fact-checking. And also shedding some light on, I recently had some interviews with Bulgarian journalists. Actually, I was surprised to find out that no one really wants more regulation to help out with fighting disinformation. Everyone was putting the stress on journalism, traditional journalism, and the quality journalism that is doing this by itself. So educating the next generation of journalists seemed more important to them. Do you agree? Recently, Facebook topped its fact-checking policy, actually, which caused significant disturb, at least in Bulgaria, from my perspective. So do you think that was such a big deal? Do you think it impacted actually the environment in which disinformation operates, to what extent? And yeah, what do you think should be our response as academia, as societies to such events? Maybe starting with Bartosz and then spreading the word.
So this decision about abandoning the fact-checking process on Facebook is being introduced right now only in USA. From what I know, in Poland, the fact-checkers, they are still cooperating with Meta until the end of the year. So it caused disturbance concerning the debate about it. But still the process it's of the fact checking and Meta products it is still on. But on the other hand, yeah, we are going towards the situation where we will have less, and I would like to avoid words like control of the content. We will have less of the fact checking and the verification of the content. And I'm also talking about the dangerous content, not only violence, but also the deceiving content, content which is published, for instance, on Facebook, but also on TikTok and Instagram as well, aimed to deceive people, not only in matter of political decisions, but also I'm talking about the thievery and the stealing of data, also deceiving people to send money to some cause, which is obviously based on fake news. I think that the journalists, yeah, they have their workshop and procedures concerning the fake news, but we have a lot of unregulated and uncontrolled content on social media. Journalists can do nothing about it. So going back to this traditional workshop conducted by journalists concerning fact-checking before publishing stuff is one thing, but also we need, and once more we're going back to education and to producing educated users, because they are becoming also the spreaders of such fake content. So the decision to push back the fact checkers on Facebook and Meta, as I said, they are still operating until the end of the year, but we will see about it. And I think this is disturbing, and we can be afraid of what is going on.
So if
maybe,
we,
yeah, I do agree with that. And yeah, they are still in Poland, they're still working, but yeah, maybe it's too much to say, but they're afraid of, they're expecting that it will change, because it's quite possible that the politics of Meta will not change, and they will push back fact checkers not only in United States but also in Europe. And I think that we should think about few details. We should talk about few details which are very important. The first one is, I don't know if you know how it works. I suppose you know, but I would like to stress it, that the effect of the fact checkers' work in Poland, this cooperation with Meta or Facebook, is not to forbid or not to remove a given post, but to show the recipients that the post contains false or partly false information. I think it's the detail, but it's very important, because we should know that it had absolutely not had nothing to do with so-called censorship, or rather it gave the recipient some kind of warning and the possibility of checking by him or herself the information. And also, this is very important, the educational role of fact-checking, because as we know, if fact-checking professionals produce some kind of debunk, which is some kind of report on fact-checking, they have to, then they do it, they provide or links, they inform about the way they were using to check this disinformation or false information or fake news. So this is the opportunity for the recipients also to check and also to learn how it's possible to check. Let's say to inspire maybe some recipients also to check to debunk the disinformation, the news, the fake news by him or herself. So I think that is in Poland still also important part of this game.
it seems to be somehow an agreement on the fact that how we educate people to deal with that is an important part of the equation, but there is still some need for regulations. Leaving aside fact-checking, there is quite a comprehensive network of fact-checkers, even without Facebook and their own fact-checking instruments. So maybe we need to develop that, certainly. But if you tend to agree that there is some regulation needed, what instruments do you think we have to regulate social media? And in what direction that regulation should be? I don't know, maybe Jan Hendrik or no, Justine, and then Jan Hendrik.
Okay, thank you. So in my opinion, the first thing that we have to ask all the platforms is transparency, because currently the algorithms are not transparent. So we really can eventually guess how they work, but we don't know exactly. So in my opinion, this is very important. And let us be fair. We do not talk just about Meta and the American platforms, but also about TikTok and all the others. And obviously, we do not want have one strong European platform, but in any case, all the platforms, at least for Europe, have to be transparent on the way they work. And also they need to follow a set of regulations that we put, like eventually how political messages are spread, how disinformation is fight, what measures they take at least to stop the disinformation. So I think we have to put a set of very simple things in the beginning, but we have to do this quickly if possible. If not, let us remember that, of course, internet is digital and many things can be regulated on the local level as well, including the access. But this is already something very, very hard, as a measure.
Maybe Jan-Hendrik, pick up on that.
Yeah, maybe. Let me first say that I guess, at least on the regulatory path, Europe is quite on a good path already. So there is consistent direction. There is consistent direction in terms of what types of regulatory mechanisms should be implemented. The DSA, the AI Act, for example, the Data Act. Two other things come in when it comes to regulation. One is implementation of regulation, and this is what we already touched upon. So we have these regulatory schemes now. Now it's the question of how do we implement them in member states, in local institutions, but also collectively as a European set of institutions. And there it comes to coordination. It comes to the question of how, for example, the digital service coordinators in each country work together. Do they have existing channels? How does that work? How do we implement the audit mechanisms that DSA, for example, has in terms of transparency, actually? So is it basically reports that the big tech companies write in collaboration with big consultancies, such as in the finance sector? That's the, let's say, blueprint from which this is taken. But who else could actually be integrated in this game of building transparent mechanisms? So is it, for example, NGOs? Is it civil society organizations and the like? So we have lots of these actors in Europe, and the question is it in the end companies and other companies, consultancies that produce transparency reports that are checked in Brussels, basically, or is it a whole setup of actors, including universities, researchers, civil society organizations, and the like, that do that job? This is a question of implementation of regulation. And then, of course, politics can do something else. It can support, it can fund, for example, through various mechanisms which have to do, of course, with regulation, but is not, let's say, negative, but positive in a way. And here we could cite fact-checking on the one hand, of course. Lots of fact-checkers are funded through European schemes, for example, but also through other governmental mechanisms, as we see that support by US governmental money specifically is obviously going down due to various reasons linked to that new administration. There is a need, obviously, to jump in, but it's also in the question of supporting tech literacy and alternative tech. So if we always mourn that there are no European alternatives, well, we also do not build them. And of course, looking at the examples of the US and Chinese cases, there is political will in supporting the growing of these platforms. So maybe pushing into that direction would help as well. So this is also something that the European Union, but also member states, and maybe us as researchers as well, supporting this can do.
Thank you for the optimistic note. It seems important and relevant. Bartosz? I think you wanted a reaction.
Yeah, I just wanted to cover a topic, but I think that Jan-Henrik put it really clearly, that because you asked about the possible way of regulating the content in social media, and I think that cooperation with fact checkers is a good way, because whenever we want to introduce some law concerning blocking the content, it will always raise some concerns about, as we said, freedom of speech. But the thing with fact checkers is that, as Professor Stasiuk-Krajewska said, that they are not erasing the content. They are just giving the annotations. And also they are using open methodology. And if we put the responsibility of flagging the content, of fact checking on the users only, just as X does right now with this flagging system, and Mark Zuckerberg wants to introduce it as well to the Meta products, it's not enough, because users, they don't have this broad methodology. Fact checkers, they have the methodology, but on the other hand, they are not censoring the content. They are not erasing, deleting the content. They are just giving the annotation, and the annotation is based on the research, which is also included with the report. So everybody can read the report. Everybody can read about the methodology, how the fact checking was made. So maybe this is the path to follow, concerning maybe not regulating the content on social media, but to verifying the content on social media, because it's neutral, and the content is still there. Even if you, as a user, disagree with the verification, you still have this original content. So we are not regulating, we are not censoring, we are just giving the annotation, and the interpretation still lies on the user himself.
Thank you. Since we are getting closer to the time limit that we have introduced to ourselves in the beginning, maybe some final thoughts on the topic. I would leave this question open, so any one of you can say whatever he thinks is the most important optimistic note that we can conclude on. Who would like to start? No optimism?
Oh.
Ah,
I just want to add one point. It's not about regulation, but it's about role of old media in setting standards of what is truthful and what is not. And Christo mentioned already in one of his questions that many people still rely on traditional journalism to make difference between truth and false, truthful and false statements. And many of research shows that on social media, the mark, the label, the brand of traditional media, strong brand of traditional media, is always a guarantee of reliable information. So I think role of the traditional media, old media, as a standard setter is nowadays is of extreme importance. And universities which provide best prepared readers for those serious journalists as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Justine?
Okay, I have to put also a note to optimism. I believe we can do better. I believe we can, when we unite our efforts, we can do and we can overcome all these technological, social, political issues. And also I trust that we as ERUA, because this is an alliance of universities, we can have our impact on on this process, especially in Europe. So I'm hopeful we're gonna find better solutions. And also, I like very much Jan's Hendrik's idea that we can build also our own platform at some point. I mean, European net, not just everyone once. Yeah, thank you.
I guess we should redefine what Fortress Europe stands for these days. Anyone else? No interventions? Okay, thank you all for participating into this very first and very challenging Aero talk, which was on social media and its impact on society. I'm pretty sure that we'll have a chance of picking up this discussion later. It is a process of development, I'm sure. So hopefully we will be seeing each other very soon. Thank you all for participating once again. Have a very great day and weekend, and see you around.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Bye.